Well, hello traders and investors. I'm LA Little and this is your weekly NeoTA wrap where we take a look at these markets and we do it unlike anyone else. We take a look at it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we're asking ourselves what happened last week. What does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show every Sunday evening, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel LA Little. If you haven't subscribed and want to, just reach up there in the right hand corner and do so. And if you haven't shared this with your friends, your family, your colleagues, please do. It's through you that I'm able to reach more folks, and it's through you that I'm able to do a better job, not only for you, but for everyone. So please share what I do with others. As far as what happened last week, let's take a look at it. You know, and bump up about the Russell was the leader, 2 3/4, but almost 2% across the board. You're getting back to respectable losses for the year. It's not a great situation, but it's not that bad either, considering how far down they were at the beginning of the year. Let's move to the S&P 500. So S&P 500. So there's a number of things to kind of notice here, and because this is a weekly show, I'm not going to dwell on the daily that much. But the swing point high here was pushed over. That's what this red arrow is telling you. It was suspect sideways. So in other words, we moved away from the bearish trend and moved to a sideways trend. And when you move to a sideways trend, that says, hey, what was in effect, right? This down move is kind of over, and you're doing this, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do that, but it doesn't mean you're going to continue sideways, because eventually it's going to get out of the sideways trend and it's either going to go down or up. And so the question is now that you've had the move down, you got the little bump up, which way are you going to go? Now that's true here on the S&P 500. And if the S&P 500 does move higher, the next logical place would be the bearish retest regen zone that's up here off this swing point low that was broken some time ago. If we pull over the weekly chart, take a look at it, and everybody's going to be doing this, and they're going to be looking back at what happened in August, and they're going to say, wow, that sure looks familiar, doesn't it? Look at those two lows down there. Boy, that looks right, doesn't it? What happened after that? Oh, yeah, we had a nice big run to the top side, right? And they're starting to look at this and saying, okay, now, top side run. Well, that could be the case, right? We could do it all over again. Is it going to be the case? That's a different question. If you're looking at it from a neoclassical perspective, you're looking at this and you're saying, I broke underneath here, right? Now I'm coming back and doing a bearish retest, regenerate, and if we're going to make that big run to the top side like we saw before, we're going to have to get over this regenerate, which is at what price point? Well, if you go over and look at the swing point lows high, that price point was 1993. Fast forward or slow forward or reverse back to this chart. 1993, what's the number? 1993. Folks, they line up almost exactly the same. So where's the target? Well, you got to think the target is going to be up in that area. And you got to think that if we're going to make any kind of run, this is where it's probably going to try to fail. So where is that? Well, that's not that far away from where we're at. And so, yeah, you could make that run up to that. But is it going to be like that slingshot that just goes back to the highs like we saw off August? Probably going to have to get over this area if it is, and this is going to be a tough spot to get over. We closed in 1948. 1993 is the number, so you're talking about 45 points higher. That's the S&P 500. If you look over at the NASDAQ now, the NASDAQ, the NDX, the Russell, they're all a little bit weaker than the S&P 500. The NASDAQ did finally clear in a fairly clear way, right? That retest, regen, the bearish one. Its next swing point is way up here, but before it gets there, it's got to get over the swing point high. And then it also has to contend with this area here, which looks like resistance. So you could see the S&P push up and towards that target we just talked about, with the NASDAQ simply trying to get up into this area. It would have to make a heck of a run to get up to there. And so you can see the difference between these in terms of their daily charts and their weeklies. NASDAQ on the On the weekly, you broke on this bar, you broke this swing point low. That's the swing point low. It's been more than 6 bars. So as it comes back, you can only expect the bottom of that bar to be tested. Again, if we do the same sort of thing we did on the S&P 500, 4711 is the number here. If we go back, pull up the daily chart again, 471100, where is that? This price point here, 4713. So we're with about 2 point difference. And so to me, that area looks to be the area that one wants to shoot for and should expect some significant sellers to show up and probably see the buyers start to disappear. So if you're looking for targets, there's your targets. You can do the same sort of thing on the NDX and the Russell yourself. I'll spare you the details. I'm going to move over real quickly to the world markets. I want to show you the DAX. Now the DAX is the one I've been paying attention to. It's the weakest one in Europe, and it's the biggest economy in Europe as well. The DAX did get over that bearish retest regenerate on a daily basis. Got over it here, got back over it again on Friday. So the DAX is trying to make a run. Now I didn't do it on the other indexes, but you could draw in your ABCD structures, right? They are here now, and they're trying to generate to the top side. If they do, the DAX has to take out this swing point high, target that one, and then go back for the bottom of the bearish retest regen from way back at this time period, back in December. That's the way the DAX sets up on the daily charts. If you look at it on the weekly, you've actually got a bearish retest regenerate that just started. Because it's within 6 bars, we can expect it to try to get to the top. If we do the same sort of thing that we've done on the other 2 indexes, the top there is 9788. If we bring back up the daily, 9788 takes you back into, let's see, where 97, nothing clean on this one on the 9788, but it looks like about right here is where you would expect the problems. And so on the DAX on the daily, right about into this area maybe, might be as far as it gets, and that's a swing point high there as well. So that's the DAX, which is the most important one in Europe. If we move over to Asia, Asia has a lot more problems than Europe does. You have the same sort of structure here on the daily chart. In other words, they're getting and setting up ABCD structures that they're trying to fire to get them up to the swing point highs or higher. But if you look at these, if you look at any of the indexes over in Asia, these little guys are in a lot of trouble compared to us. They've already done more than 6 bars underneath on a weekly. That means when they lift back up, and in this case 270, probably about 285 or 285 or so, 285, up into that area. Actually, we can get the number here. It's 20. Low is 2368. As it gets back up there, it shouldn't be able to get that much higher if this, significant trend that's in effect, which is a downtrend, right, is going to try to regenerate lower. If it's going to do that, you're going to see it come into this price area, and you're going to see it try to spike back down to the bottom side. So Asia looking pretty tough. Europe still hanging in there. US actually looking the best from an index point of view. I'm going to leave you with one other thought, and that is that, as I was talking to you last week, I was saying, hey, that dollar is going to try to regenerate to the bottom side. That FXE is going to try to regenerate to the top side. We didn't see that happen, and what we were talking about was, and this is the FXE on the daily, we were talking about this little zone. And it was trying to hold that zone as it should, right? It was more than 6 bars on a daily. As it came into that area, it got down farther than it should, which was kind of odd. And I told you I was scratching my head about it. And B, it just looked like it couldn't regenerate back higher. And sure enough, it breaks down. And so the currencies are starting to act different than what the charts were telling us they should do. And when something doesn't do what it should do, you need to pay attention, especially if we're talking about currencies, which a lot of times are the tail that wags the equity markets, the dog of the equity markets, or however you want to put it. The point is that they're not doing what they should. That tells me that this is going to push lower. And if we start looking at the FXE on a weekly basis, right, you're down in this big range. It's more clear if you put it on a monthly. So you got a consolidation, right? We've seen this before where you get some sort of a consolidation going on, right? And then after the consolidation, and we saw it leading into this one, will it generate lower? You know, are we going to see the European equities potentially try to work higher off of a weaker euro in the short term? And they're trying to set that up. I mean, it's right here at the ledge right now. If it gets up underneath this, you know, and if it holds this bigger range, then we could see the European equities work higher. And for the most part, that has helped the U.S. equities in the short run. The risk here is that this really starts to take off. So in other words, if we were to see, and I've got the dollar up now, if we were to see, and here's that bearish retest regenerate, right? And the dollar closed right at the top of it. If the dollar gains strength tomorrow, it will also break it. If we see the dollar start to move higher, and if we bring it to the monthly, right, the dollar had done that same sort of thing where it had consolidated. It's doing it again, right? And in between, it had made the big spike up. And if you remember this big spike up, it came at a time where it began to cause grief in the equity markets, and I suspect if we break out here, we're going to see the same thing happen again. We're not at that point, but it's something to keep on your radar screen. I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. That's where we're at. As far as what's going to happen tomorrow, well, you know, if you look back here at the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ on Friday, they can certainly push a little bit higher. It's as we just talked about, right? I mean, the next real test is way up here, another 50 points. So we could get another push higher. Question is will we? Or are we going to simply do, are we simply going to do the same sort of thing that we've done, and that is consolidate in this area? I wouldn't be surprised to see us consolidate. I don't see, you know, if you look at the economics this week, if you look at what's happening in terms of known news events, I don't see huge things taking place this week. Most of the earnings are behind you, so forth. So, you know, this week is probably going to be more of a consolidation than anything else. You've already had the big spikes, folks. The big spike was off of this trade here. And, you know, I alerted members to it early on as to that day when we reversed, and the fact that we probably should get a push up. I alerted them specifically to this trade here to flip, but we were actually short, to flip around, get long, and to get out of that short and, you know, book some gains and to make this move up. Of course, I can't tell you what I told them on Friday, but, you know, they are positioned, I think, pretty well for what's ahead. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some consolidation start to come into this market. That's it for tonight. Have a great one. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is and was your weekly NeoTA wrap. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.